Welcome everyone to the StartmeupHK Salons virtual events. My name is Jamilat Kano and I'm going to be your MC for the festival. As you know, the StartmeupHK Salons is a global initiative by the StartmeupHK team. Together with the InvestHK overseas offices, they want to push their initiatives and promote the StartmeupHK in the local startup communities. We are going to have 6 overseas salons targeted into very specific markets. And that's why we have the ASEAN offices joining us today. Hello Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. We're also connecting all the way to Europe with the Brussels office, London, and Berlin. Salut Brussels, ça va? My name is Jamilat. We're going to have the North American edition with the offices in Toronto, hi Canada, New York, and San Francisco. South American edition with the office in Chile, hola Chile, ¿cómo están? And Brazil, A to the bone, and Mexico. We have Middle East and India offices with Mumbai joining together. And we also have the Greater Bay Area office in Guangzhou. Dajia, how are you everyone? And of course, our attendees here in Hong Kong. Thank you very much for joining. So I hope you enjoy, connect, support, network, and promote. See you soon at all our events. Our next panel is the Fintech panel, and we will be enhancing the awareness on fintech opportunities of Hong Kong to the ASEAN, and also how we can leverage the Hong Kong positioning for overseas expansion. Our moderator today is Jane Chan. She's the head of StartmeupHK at Invest Hong Kong. Please give a welcome to Jane.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to our FinTech panel today. This panel is called Unlocking FinTech Opportunities Through Hong Kong, and I'm really privileged to have a set of very distinguished guests with us today to give you more information about what's happening in the FinTech space, how they see FinTech going forward, and what are obviously the opportunities through Hong Kong to other places, whether we're talking about GBA and Asia in general. My name is Jane Chan. I head up the StartmeupHK team at Invest Hong Kong, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Let me introduce each one of my guests here. I'll start with the left-hand side. We've got Spencer, who's actually from the Science Park, and Spencer Chan is Assistant Director for the Business Development for the Science Park. Next to him, we've got Mark Munoz, an old friend, and he's a Managing Director for Vector Fintech Ventures. And Edward Sitt is actually from the Family Office Association. He's one of the committee members. He's on the market development side for the Family Office Hong Kong Association. Next to him, we've got Rico Chan from the Cyberport side, and he looks after FinTech across the board for Cyberport. And finally, we've got King Leung, my colleague and the head of the FinTech team at Invest Hong Kong. We're just going to ask each one of our panelists just to give a little bit of information about what they've done in the past, their background, what they're doing now, and then we'll jump straight into some of the burning questions that you folks might have with regards to FinTech. Thank you. Spencer, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jane, and thanks for inviting me and also the Science Park and then to join this panel, and of course seeing all the old friends here. So yeah, a little bit of myself. So I've known Invest Hong Kong and Jane for many years, and so before my time working at the Science Park, basically I worked for a couple of the trade promotional office in Hong Kong. So I work at the TDC, and so I've been working in the Guangzhou and Shenzhen. So now we talk about the Greater Bay Area. So I have 5 years of working there as a first-person experience on that. So we see the growth of the economy and also the shift of the gravity of the economic change. So I joined the Science Park in 2018. And that's a particular year, particularly for the INT ecosystem growth in Hong Kong. That's when this government administration, so they pour in enormous support financially and also in terms of like policy, and then to help boost the Hong Kong INT. So the Science Park itself, we're placed at a place called Sha Tin in Hong Kong, and we host over 1,000 companies of multi-tech. So it's very happy to be here today, and then particularly to share more about the fintech with the questions. Thanks, Jane.
Great, thank you. Mark?
Hi guys, it's exciting to be at an in-person event. I just can't believe it. It's really great. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me. So I have had the fortunate and somewhat unfortunate experience of being an entrepreneur. For about 15 years, I've built different types of fintech companies. 10 years in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and for the last 15 years being based out here in Hong Kong. But along the way, over the last 10 years or so, I've also been an investor. And we saw an enormous potential in in Hong Kong and Asia and what we knew in the US to build a venture capital fund, which is Vector Fintech Ventures. And we launched our fund in 2019. And we are usually the first institutional check into startups. So we invest at the seed and Series A. And what that means is we are looking for founders who are really trying to change the world with financial services and the use of technology for that. And one thing that's really different about what we do and how we operate is partly because we have been founders ourselves. We have built companies. We know what it's like to stare down a balance sheet when you only have 30 days or 60 days left of cash and how you manage that. We have managed through a number of exits. And that's been very helpful in terms of what we do. The second thing about our venture practice is our regulatory experience. We tend to partner with regulators all around the world. We've worked with 45 different regulating agencies in multiple countries. And we help them shape fintech policy, as well as give us a good insight as to what's working in those different markets. And then the third is our corporate partnerships. We have a number of corporates that we partner with who are trying to solve real problems and where fintech solutions can obviously enable them. Today, we have about 85 companies in our portfolio. We have 3 different funds, and we spend, I'm happy to say that Hong Kong represents 50% of our investments in the fintech fund today.
Great, thank you. Edward?
Hi, Edward said, I'm from the Family Office Association, Hong Kong. This is obviously the industry body, and we hopefully represent and try to be the voice of the industry. But at the same time, it's a non-profit organization, so I still have to earn a living. So I do have a job. Actually, I'm responsible for the corporate development for Greater China in Raffles Family Office. Some of you might be familiar with the name, some of you may not. It pays my job, it pays my salary, but most importantly, today the theme is about fintech, and I personally is a user, day-to-day user of fintech, and I guess every one of you are as well. For us, no matter from Raffles' point of view or from family office point of view, it's actually very, very exciting to see Hong Kong as one of the most established city in terms of incubating, developing, and nurturing fintech companies. That is a very, very important message to the world and also to family office, because we, as an investor, we look into different elements, not just the return, but think about it. How is it going to change the game in the world? How can we actually represent Hong Kong to message out to everybody else that this is a place where you should start looking for the future? So bringing into the message, not just gathering all the family office together to share intel, to get a view, but more importantly, how can we shape the family office industry to make it a better place? So that is our mission. So I hope we can share a little bit more later, and I'm proud to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, we'll pass it to Rico.
Hi, I'm Rico Tang from Cyberport. I have over 20 years experience in financial service and also technologies. And Cyberport may be a name for you, you heard about it or may not. And we are one of the biggest technical digital technologies platform in Asia. And we have over 1,600 community members, and 400 of them are fintech related. So we are one of the biggest fintech ecosystems in Hong Kong. And we've been partnering with Invest Hong Kong and also Science Park and also other stakeholders and to help companies who are keen to do business in Hong Kong. Before I joined Science Park, I would say just about last year, and I also built my own blockchain company in the year 2017. So I would hope that my experience can help people who want to fulfill their dream to become entrepreneurs. So since I've been on the other side for 3 years' time, so I think that I can help you to come to Hong Kong and to fulfill your dream.
Great.
Hello everyone, King Leong, Head of Fintech, Invest Hong Kong. Basically, what we do at Invest Hong Kong is to serve the entrepreneurs, like many of you online, to fulfill the dream and also enter a very exciting market in Hong Kong and using Hong Kong to grow elsewhere. And just a bit of a background by myself about how the whole background experience of mine would come in full circle. Essentially, I started my career in the US, I was in consulting for 2 firms, and interestingly, back then I served a number of the US agencies, from the DoD, Department of Defense, National Security Agency, the Inland Revenue. Now, but besides that, actually that basically taught me a lot along the way as we enter into the digital age, in which we had a venture fund, and I was part of that venture fund. So I got a taste of being a venture capitalist, and then I came back to Asia. I raised some seed money from Credit Suisse for the first venture that I started back in Hong Kong. And since then, I started and ran several companies. I tried a little bit about angel investment myself. And then now, coming back in full circle, I joined the governments. So in a way, looking back, I feel that all these prior experience will be very useful to connect better with you so that we understand your pain points, so that we can serve you better to help you succeed in Hong Kong and beyond. So with that, I guess back to you, Jane.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the background. And as you've heard, so we've got actually the entrepreneurs, practitioners who've actually been through what you folks are going through. And not only that, they've also got that overview of what's happening in the fintech space and those networks and relationships that potentially can, to give you some advice on how to go forward and take advantage of all those kind of opportunities. I'll just start it off by saying, actually, the masks, aren't they great? Apparently, these are all the rage in these pandemic times. But just going back to fintech, tell me, I mean, from your different perspectives, what do you think resonates well in the fintech space? As we know, it's actually quite a large kind of, sector, and there's lots of different types of subsectors within that. What do you think resonates well, actually, for Hong Kong and actually Asia in general? Mark, I'm actually going to direct this one at you first.
Sure. So it's a wild question because the opportunity is so large right now, and where we feel, particularly in Hong Kong or in Asia in general, a lot of good infrastructure type opportunities still exist. As advanced as we think we are in terms of payments and sort of electronic different types of transactions online, we're actually still pretty far behind in terms of where technology can take us. So, for example, in Hong Kong in particular, I think there's an opportunity for payment orchestration. We think that there's still a long way to go in terms of building use cases for blockchain. So the infrastructure, the core components, open banking, a lot of those things still are important. The second area I want to highlight is in private capital markets. There is so much capital floating through the system that could be made more efficient and access better and more interesting types of projects for individuals. So whether it's crowdfunding type applications, I mean, we just saw what the US did in terms of raising some of the limits there, to being able to access sort of funds or sort of secondary types of transactions and getting access to those things and making that more efficient. And then the third area that we spend a lot of time on is deep tech. Which is where things like what's happening out in Science Park, what we've seen there, take shape. And that can be in AI, that can be in more types of quantum, that can be in quantum technologies. So there's a lot more happening in the deep tech space.
Right. So what you're saying is like, fintech on its own, it's just not a standalone thing. We are talking about all these different types of technologies, I suppose, almost merging and integrating with one another to create all these new business models or these new interesting kind of technologies that will really help. Actually, I'm going to direct this same question to you as well, Rico, just because you come from you founded like a blockchain startup. What do you think are the types of fintech that resonates well in Hong Kong and through Asia?
I think there's no doubt about it, right? Hong Kong being right what we call a tier one financial market, and we know that right RegTech is something very important. And last year, right, the Hong Kong MA announced 24 months right milestone and to drive right the adoption of RegTech. So this is one of the key areas right we are seeing right a big progress. And banks are looking into right some RegTech right being powered by AI, so that right they can help them right to save time right to I would say clear all the alert every day. And the second area right like mentioned by another speaker right about the open API. You think about it, as an insurance company, apart from the data you have, how can you explore new business? Of course, you would like to right access to other data which can give you some idea the needs of the potential clients in the market. So these are very two clear areas which we can see it. Of course, GBA, we talk about it. And one very clear initiative under the GBA will be the Wealth Connect. How do we provide a wealth tech solution right to serve a 90 million right users in this area? We are seeing a lot of very exciting opportunities right in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong always will be the springboard right for companies from ASEAN right to go to not only Hong Kong but also to serve a bigger area right in North Asia. Of course, that will cover right China.
Right, so wealth tech and RegTech are the areas. King, you head up the StartmeupHK team. Sorry, the fintech team at Invest Hong Kong. You know, what kind of activities do you do to actually help those kind of fintechs who are interested in establishing a base here? What's your day-to-day operations like?
Sure. Well, I guess there's a lot of things, but broadly speaking, there are three key things that we're doing. First of all, it's about the initial engagement. First of all, we have this privilege for having colleagues across 30 plus cities around the world. So we have a lot of ongoing communications with our colleagues overseas to understand some of the emerging or also some of the more promising fintechs that are interested to pursue their own expansion in Asia, with Hong Kong being the base. So that is the initial outreach, if you will. Now, the second bit of it is that obviously when we have the initial conversation, then they would like to understand the landscape. And of course, I guess myself in particular, because of the consulting background, we're able to give them some, I would say, initial pointers about how to navigate the landscape in Hong Kong. And along the way, first and foremost, they need to find clients. And this is also some of the things that we do, is to drive some kind of initial business introductions. Now, the third thing we do is essentially working with our partners, like good friends at Port, again, Science Park, Mark, and then Edward. Now, these are all the partners we work with on a daily basis. At the end of the day, our job is to really figure out where are all the resources across the ecosystem. And by knowing where are all the goodies or the nuggets of resources, we're able to connect our potential client, which is you, with the right party, whether that be raising capital or connecting with some corporates and so forth. So these are the three things that, in a nutshell, that we do.
Okay, you mentioned partnerships. I'm looking at Edward here, the Family Office Association of Hong Kong. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, basically, we are great friends. If you want to look for me, just go on to LinkedIn, you'll see me.
Right.
It's not exclusive. But most importantly, to be a little bit more precise, how do we partner? I guess we step back a little bit and look at what we are doing or how the industry is doing. I have been preparing a little bit of numbers for you to give you an idea of how powerful Hong Kong is in some way. So, factual, there are 10,435 ultra-high net worth individuals and families in New York, number one, in 2020. Hong Kong is actually number two. It's just 9,950. To be honest, the third one in the world is Tokyo, and is 7,800. So you see, New York and Hong Kong, it's by far leading the way in terms of wealthy families, wealthy investors, and how you can derive into how they actually strategically allocate their access. And one of the very important thing, obviously, is fintech. The thing is, I used to work for Hong Kong Exchange for a few years, and one of the key things, if you look at it, is the weighted voting average rights on the listings. So we have Meituan in Hong Kong, and eventually we also have the secondary listing. So all these Baidu, Alibaba is coming in, right? The China's tech adaptation, it's so high. not only makes Hong Kong a very favorable place to be the #1 listing place in Hong Kong, or in the world, but it's more importantly bringing in the concept of how promising tech is going to be, and it really brings the future of all these tech developments and startups. You know what? Hong Kong has the infrastructure. So if you look at the other side of the numbers, there is actually Hong Kong ranking #4 in terms of global financial index cities in the world. So we keep on talking about how good Hong Kong is, but if you really think deep down from all these factual numbers and neutral numbers, we think with the collaboration of us family office associations together with Invest Hong Kong's Science Park, Cyberport, investors, we can share not only just the intel, we help the startups or even the ventures or middle later stage and how to promote them into a successful projects. And at the end of the day, of course, we look at the return. But return is not just the only thing we are looking at. And I guess Hong Kong is bringing in a powerful amount of firepower as well as infrastructure. That's what I really want to tell everybody today.
Right, and that's why you established this Family Office Association to help to coalesce some of that. I just want to say to everyone, if you've got any questions you would like to ask these panelists, feel free to actually put your questions on the chat box, and we'll make 10 minutes at the end to actually go through some of those questions. So feel free just to ask us. I'm actually going to turn to you now, Spencer. So you've been working at the Science Park. It is in terms of space and in terms of just the numbers of companies, it is probably the biggest science park here in Hong Kong. So you've got like a real bird's eye view of what's been happening, of the latest developments in innovation and technology. So tell us, what have you been seeing over the past couple of years, and where do you see these kind of tech developments going into?
Yeah, thanks, Jane. That's too generous of you. And basically, we can see from high up, but definitely we're working down on the ground, and particularly addressing to the audience in front of the screen. So basically, we are helping. It's just an ecosystem. It's helping all the startups, worldwide startups, and actually to fulfill the dream. And basically, Hong Kong it's if not the only one of the best ideal locations that it can fulfill the dream. So as I said, this one in this panel is actually a small ecosystem together. So I particularly like King's what he mentioned is about the pointers. So Invest Hong Kong will always be the first point of contact, particularly when you are thinking about where should I put my Asia expansion. So Invest Hong Kong definitely with their over 37 offices around the world, that's particularly it's a very handy and easy point of view. As the Science Park itself, as I said, I joined at a very, very strategic time in 2018 when we see the government and also all the resources and the support and all put in this INT ecosystem. So Science Park is the Science Park in Hong Kong. Basically, we are doing different deep technologies. And fintech is definitely one of our pillars, and we see fintech not itself by in terms of like technology or deep tech, but also we see it like a more open economy. So it's how fintech is actually applying on the different technologies. So be it healthcare, biotech, chemistry, biology, mathematics, you name it. So basically, what we see from this open economy, as I said, Science Park we have 1,000 companies on all different techs. And then out of this digital and open economy, we have around 180 companies out of it. So almost like 18% of the whole Science Park. It's leveraging on fintech or doing the fintech deep tech. So Science Park, we recently launched something called Open EX. So in a long name called Open Economy X. So that X basically is the pointers that connecting with all the different ecosystem. So on one side, we have the financial institutions in Hong Kong. So as we said, as the world's number 2 and also the number 4 in terms of like financial index. So we have the abundance of these financial institutions, banking and non-banking. So these financial institutions, be it more conventional, but these days definitely they need a lot of adoptions of fintech technologies. So we at Science Park, we in the middle part, we recruit all the teams. So some of them, they are the Science Park companies. Some of them, they are the potential Science Park companies. And on the other hand, we have regulatories and compliance organizations. Like in Hong Kong, it is the Hong Kong Quality Assurance Associations, HKQAA. So to safeguard all these startups, fintech companies, they are providing APIs. And that those APIs will be complied to our standard and other protocols. And then we use that for all these financial institutions. So currently, it's in the beta edition. So right now, we have over 20 companies already joining this and then start pitching these and then to the financial institutions in Hong Kong. And then, of course, a lot of them, they're MNCs. So for in front of the screen, for all the teams, basically, actually, you're looking for business. So definitely this platform, completely virtual. And of course, if you want to do business actually in Hong Kong, do find King and do find Jane and then to use all. Yeah, do find me, and, of course. So we have that kind of like resources really to help these companies and then to succeed.
Okay.
Thanks.
So thanks for that. Very comprehensive, actually. So some really interesting programs for all your startups out here who are interested to look at Hong Kong as a market. I'm going to jump over again to you, Rika, just to talk about. You mentioned that Cyberport has actually got the highest concentration of fintechs here in Hong Kong. What kind of support do you folks give to companies who are interested, to explore the market opportunities here?
I remember, right, when I start my own business, right, I always ask myself, right, what are the key things, right, I need from, I would say, right, the platform like support, capital, people, access to market. So when I joined Support, right, I understand more about what we can do to help the entrepreneurs. On the what we call the capital side, if you have an idea, you want to, right, to build a POC, you can start to join, right, our fund, one of the fund programs. And then gradually, right, when you want to commercialize your product and then to go to market, we have a series of funding schemes. When you add that up, it's a total of 1.1 million Hong Kong, which is, right, a very important, right, financial support when you want to start your business in Hong Kong. And we don't take any equity, so which is a very generous, right, offer, right, to people not only for Hong Kong, but also from overseas. I'm going to share with you two examples later. Apart from the capital side, right, on the early stage, we also set up our own virtual fund. We also set up our own VC, and we had a total of 200 million. We invested into 17 projects in the past, and for this financial year, we're going to top up to 400 million. And we understand that, right, as a startup. And not only you need support, right, at the PA round, the seed round, you also need to support, right, from the what we call the post-A round, including the B round. So the new funding we put into our own VC, right, is trying to help not only the Hong Kong company, but you guys, right, to really, right, based in Hong Kong and then expand that into China. And on the people side, right, we have been working closely, right, like Science Park, right, with universities. To train up more talent people, right, so that, right, they can, right, join the fintech industry. And thirdly, about the business, we all understand that, right, if you want to do a very good fundraising, you need to build your business case, acquire users. What do we do? And we have a Cyberport enterprise network. So big corp come to Cyberport, right, and then source for solution. Apart from that, right, we also, right, work closely with the Financial Service Association. And they have a lot of, right, institutions, but they don't have fintech solution. So we work with them together, right, to, I would say, right, to match their need. Since last year, right, we have done, I would say, right, under the COVID-19, we have done 3 major virtual demo day, from RegTech, blockchain, right, all the way to wealth tech, which is quite important because, right, we can't meet our customer because of the situation. So we need to find a more innovative way and then trying to improve the success rate. So by organizing, right, that kind of virtual demo day, so that was very amazing. And I know that, right, the RegTech demo day, right, we had over 200 relevant users coming from the back to mid office, and they come from 40 institutions who look at, right, I would say, right, the 4 solutions, right, coming from 4 RegTech companies. I think both Science Park, right, and Cyberport, right, are very keen, right, to give you all the support you needed to acquire business. This is, right, the way for you to step up and scale and then take more capital, right, from the market. Like Mark said, there are a lot of money in Hong Kong, but when you start to come to Hong Kong, right, you need a little bit of support at the very beginning. and to use the platform we have, and then to use the network we have. So this is what we do.
Right. So what you're saying is like Cyberport provides like really the fundamental kind of
people,
support. Yeah. Capital, people, and market access. Yeah. I mean, you know, as all of you in the startup side know, you've got to have some fundamentals in place if the startup is to succeed. And it just sounds like, you know, Cyberport provides that in terms of the networks and connections. We're going to jump into the fundraising and investment side a little bit more. So I'm definitely coming to you, Mark. You know, you've come from, you know, a very kind of diverse background, and you started companies, you've invested in kind of companies, and you know, can you tell us how that experience has really shaped your investment decisions? It's like, you know, having gone through those kind of journeys, what are you looking for?
Sure. Well, let me just say, first, I think what I heard from you was everything is going to be fintech. And what I'm hearing from you is that there's so many ways to access capital and get support around it. So, I think that's true all around. But, you know, in my experience as having been a founder myself and gone through the ups and downs and some terrific exits and some real heartaches is working with other founders. I mean, that's part of what obviously a lot of us like to say as VCs, that we're very founder friendly. But to be honest, there's very few in the VC community who have actually been there and done that and gone through good and bad, and then who can really relate to founders. And so, you know, the founders in our portfolio companies, once they reach 3 years, we almost mandate to them that they need to take at least a 2 to 3 week break, if not a full month, if not, or if they can handle it. Because there's a real thing called founders fatigue. It happens. It happened to me. It happened to my co-founders. It is maybe not scientifically proven, but I guarantee you there is a point that founders reach after 3 years. So it's things like that I think we look for in our investment process. We look for founders who are communicating to us. We look for founders who we can watch them problem solve. And, you know, it usually takes us at least a quarter in terms of our relative timeline before we make an investment, because we're really seeing how the founders and the executive team manage the problem-solving component of their business. The second thing that we tend to spend a lot of time on is opportunity time, right? Is this the right technology, you know, solving the right problem, and is it the right time? Because I will tell you, back in the dot-com days, I was starting my own modern-day Robinhood. I literally was free trading. We were making, we were all of our revenue was coming from market making. We actually became a market maker. But back then, it was just too early in the market. Now, we were fortunate that we did get bought by TD Ameritrade. So there was a nice exit, but it wasn't clearly the one where I'm riding a yacht today, right? So yeah, so it was fun though, and it was great, and it was very early in my career, but the timing just wasn't right for what that business was. So you know that plays a lot into what we're doing. So you'll find a lot of VCs who say, well, we want to see what problem you're solving. Well, that's true. But we also want to make sure that's the right time. And so that leads me to sort of the third sort of idea or component in terms of our process, which is we turn to our partners, we turn to our friends, we turn to the folks that we know and get their opinions. As smart as we think we are, which we're really not at the end of the day, it's the circle of people that we have around us supporting what we do that give us insight. And we're very fortunate that we get to work with a lot of great corporates. I mean, Hong Kong is this financial hub. Everybody knows it. We're very fortunate that we have a lot of large financial institutions, whether you're banks or insurance companies. So we can turn to them. And many times they co-invest with us. We're one of the few VCs in the world who say we actually love to co-invest with big banks. And we've done it. We've had some good opportunities there. But they help us realize what opportunities or what problems they're trying to solve and where, you know, particular maybe startup is trying to help them. And that gives us good insight. So we're always paying attention to those three things.
Right.
Sorry, Mark, just curious, because apparently Mark is very reputable in the industry as well. Sometimes, I'm really trying to ask these questions privately, but now I realize it's better to ask it here.
Let's put it out in the open here.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
For you guys, do you guys have any preference on a particular sort of types of tech or fintech like projects that you guys are looking after, or?
Yeah, it's important. That's a good question because it's not only our timing. I was saying opportunity and the time for problem solving. It's also for that particular fund. We've been fortunate that we've had a lot of leeway in terms of where we invest and what we invest into. But after a while, we are looking for very specific things. So our fund construction and in terms of how we're deploying capital and where we're deploying it into what types of fintech do come into play. And so there are many cases where we love a particular company. We would love to add it to our portfolio, but it just doesn't fit at that right time. And in many cases, what we do is we try to help them with our VC friends to see who else can come in and be part of that. But yes, that is a big part of what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think sometimes, when I talk to startups, they tend to think of VCs or investors as this constant tap of capital potentially into their business, without realizing behind the scenes is obviously, the different cycles involved as well. And you mentioned how important it is to not only find the relevant tech, but the relevant tech at the right time. Just talking about timing, Edward, is it the right time for family offices to invest in fintech? And how can the startups actually get themselves ready to actually, reach out to these family offices?
I guess it's always the right time, because obviously we are actually in a stage in a life that fintech will probably be with you forever.
Right.
It's just whether of how it is going to be evolved. Just to step back a little bit, it's also very inspiring to hear what Mark said, because apparently Mark or venture capital, tech ventures, so they have the money, they invest, they have a particular appetite, they look at very specific things. We also invest in fintech. Apparently, we have some other criteria. So for us as a family office, we have to make sure that the project itself is in line with the family's appetite. Either it's going to be a particular families or a group of families with common interests. So I don't want to jump into too much about talking about returns and stuff. But so it's like looking for a girlfriend, right? We are very specific, and the hurdle might be very high.
Right.
But maybe on Mark's side, we'll have
I don't know
a bit of a buffer.
It's true.
Where this conversation
Very true. That's a
is
good way to
going.
put it.
So they are very founder friendly. Friends friendly. We would be very specific when we look into founders. Why? First, we have a very specific time frames, and we have to make sure that our exit strategies for all these projects that we invest on behalf of the families has to be very clear, on top of the returns. And then goes into, why do I have to invest into your project? How is it revolutionizing the industry? Okay, if your technology is really a game changer, obviously it's going to be really good. But we all know that if it is such a big unicorn, probably there will be a lot of tickets and lining ups, and it will be overly congested. So that would be a different problems instead. But if your project, your tech is really applicable and it's going to change the world, but not that revolutionizing, should I invest into that? It goes into opportunity cost as well. And together with the emerging idea of ESG, so the S, the sustainability, and also the governance, like the masks we have today, we were already talking about reusing them, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. So if you have that element, we will look into it a bit further, just to make sure that this is also in line with what we believe. So return, whether your project is going to be sustainable, whether your project, what is your market positioning, and how is it going to be developing, and how much need from Invest Hong Kong, from Science Park, from Cyberport, and then from our point of view, how do we exit? That it has to be very clear. And some of the very important events like the HKMA back at Sandbox, and also every year we have the FinTech Week. It's actually very important for us to also explore further projects. So you guys can meet us from these events or directly from our official websites, obviously.
I think the next one, right, you also need to pay attention will be, right, the government funded, right, the FinTech POC project. Because, right, those one picked by the, I would say, right, the financial institution, right, could be the winner in the future.
Right.
Because, right, the bank is going to, right, endorse those projects. So it's their putting their reputation, right, on this project. So watch out on those projects.
Actually, that is a very good point. I was just sharing with Rico before these sessions. We are actually looking into some projects which has some government grant or government fund. So it's an endorsement.
Right.
It does give a little bit of a support. And standing from a Hong Kong point of view, we do want to have, if we have two similar projects, we do have the passion to support the establishment of Hong Kong and to help them to become the next unicorn. and obviously to reap the return later on, and then we'll have a good party, right?
Right, excellent. And just talking about government, it leads me very naturally to my colleague here. King, we've been talking to startups, fintechs, and obviously that GBA opportunity is massive, and that's one of the reasons why we have been getting companies interested in reaching out to us to explore the Hong Kong opportunity. Tell us about how that fintech opportunity through Hong Kong to the GBA. I mean, fintech was actually listed in the last 14-year plan, for example. Tell us a little bit more about that and how these companies from Asia, other parts of Asia, can actually tap into those opportunities.
Sure. So thanks, Jane. Now, it's a big topic, to be honest. When you look at the national 5-year plan in China, this is a massive planning exercise. And the one that Jane just mentioned is the 14th 5-year plan. Now, interestingly, while this is so important, there are a lot of entrepreneurs in particular in mainland China. They'll be looking at that plan religiously. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the direction being laid out there will be where the entrepreneurs and investors are placing their bets. Now, so similarly, for you who are interested about exploring the China market, again, this is a very good starting point. Now, but at the same time, sometimes those information are in Chinese, and for cultural differences, it's a bit difficult to grasp what exactly that entails. And this is where Hong Kong comes into play. Now, when we really boil down that plan in relation to fintech, now there are a few things that I think would be good sort of guiding principles. Now, first of all, as you guys may be picking up from the mainstream media, now, despite the rhetoric, actually, China is opening up, as China is a major advocate of globalization. So naturally, I think from a commerce standpoint, from a finance standpoint, then China needs to open up the finance sector, which is happening. Now, but along the way, being such a major economy, running a slightly sort of different system, so to speak, now I think the leadership in Beijing are taking a very prudent approach. So as a result, there are some, I'll say, pilots that are being run, and you can call those the sandboxes, right, as we refer in fintech. So basically, the GBA, as Jane mentioned, is essentially the GBA is a sandbox in which Hong Kong is playing a part of allowing international players like yourself to try out this sandbox. And then you may ask, well, okay, yeah, I got it conceptually, but where is the money? Where is the opportunities? Now, there are a few things you might be picking up too in the mainstream media. Now, the biggest one is the wealth management, or the Wealth Connects. So that is essentially opening up the wealth management market. Now, and for that, this is massive. Now, why this is massive is because when you look at the action, again, don't trust the words, look at the action. All right. Now, when you look at the big boys, the Citibank, the Standard Chartered, these big boys are already hiring or have plans to hire hundreds of people dedicated for the GBA wealth management market. So this is where you can pick up as the kind of pointers about where you would like to follow in terms of the major trend. So this is one. The wealth tech, wealth management is one. Now, along the way, insurance connect is another. So in the interest of time, I won't go into a lot of details. But the other things that are also in that plan that's also interesting for fintech is RegTech, regulatory technology, because obviously with all these innovation going on, then regulators are also very keen to make sure that the things are under control. And you can't do things manually these days. You have to bring technology. This is where RegTech comes into play. I think, by the way, Rico is one of the major drivers of RegTech too, because he himself has the background that's so passionate. So he's the guy you want to look to talk to, right, for RegTech. Now, but besides RegTech, last but not least, trade finance. Because obviously there's just a lot of money flow. Now, sometimes people would have the kind of sometimes wrong perception about the market size of Hong Kong by just looking at our population. Yes, the population is not big, 7.5 million. But one way you can look at the Hong Kong market size is very simply, you go and download the financial statements of, let's say, HSBC. And you look at how much money they make from the Hong Kong market or the Hong Kong office. You'll be blown away about how such a lion's share of revenue and profits made in Hong Kong. Because as an international financial center, I think there are a lot of the activities, opportunities are really on the flow. the money flow. And we have tons of that in Hong Kong. So again, I can go on and on, but these are some of the major things I just want to highlight. Wealth management, wealth tech, reg tech, insure tech, trade finance. These are some of the ones that are definitely some major opportunities that you guys can take a look at.
Right. And I'm going to turn to you, Spencer. We're going to talk about funding, actually.
Yeah,
We're going to, because it is a burning question on the parts of a lot of startups. How do Science Park help companies who are looking for funds?
Yeah, I think thanks, Jane, and thanks all the gentlemen. And the gentleman here in the panel already covers a lot of comprehensive information here. So maybe I can wrap this up with some examples. Then we can showcase what the 14th five-year plan, the GBA, the funding, and then how this ecosystem actually is helping. One case is MealTech. MealTech, now it's all in the newspaper. It's so buzz these days. It's from Shanghai. So they literally and then pick Hong Kong as the GBA hub and then to go global. So when they first come to the Science Park as a red tech company, so we first definitely we work on the R&D, the deep tech, and also the ecosystem connection. So, but more looking into that, it's that we attract different VCs and family offices. So you may have heard about Mr. Li Ka-shing. Investing in MealTech. So in just a very short frame of less than 1 year, so from November and then January this year, so already raised up to Series B. So it's a vivid example exactly that is a Chinese unicorn 2B, and then looking into this 14th five-year plan, doing red tech. We know that we need to come to Hong Kong, so they come here and then seek funding, and then at the end, boom. So that's all the buzz. And also this friend, we've been talking about the Canadian Intact. So of course, Intact is a big corp. So we see it more like a co-incubation partner. So we work with Intact as an Intact innovation hub. It's a lab here, and then we help co-incubate local startups, and then we work with that. So with the resources that they have, with the data that they have, and also the model it goes, the Science Park actually it's grooming a group of companies. We call it like an ecosystem. It's a small family with some big players in the market. So we hope that, of course, we are as a GP. So we do have our own fund, which is called the Hong Kong STP Corporate Venture Ventures. So that CVF basically it helps as a matching fund, and then to attract these companies who are actually they're in the fundraising rounds, and then we as a helping hand or as a stepping stone for them, and then to reach even more investors. So this hopefully we would like to wrap up the discussion here.
Yeah, this is really going into the case studies of how you've helped these kind of companies. Actually, we do only have a few minutes left. I'm going to end with one more question. But before we do that, if you've got any kind of questions you would like to ask these panelists, please reach out again through the chat group, and we would be happy to take your questions. I'm going to end it finally with a question for you, Mark, actually. I'm going to ask you about the kind of exits. You already alluded to some of the exits that Victor has made. You've got Continuo, Scrive, Seed Invest. So what's your methodology or criteria when you're investing in these kind of early stage opportunities? And how do you take that right through to an exit?
That's a long, complicated question.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes.
I know.
We've only got a few minutes.
Let me focus perhaps on Contineo. This was a good idea where sometimes as VCs we tend to seed deals, which means it's an idea, it's something that we see and we find the right team to help build it from the scratch. So it's quite unique in that sense. But as I was saying earlier, one of the things that we do at Vector in particular is we work with a number of corporates, and we help them solve their problems by bringing tech to them. In this case, we noticed a problem across multiple investment banks. They were trying to find a better way to distribute structured products. And so we funded Contineo together. It was a consortium type deal. And knowing how these types of companies accelerate very quickly because they have an installed user base from day one, we were able to attract the six Swiss stock exchange to set up and invest in Hong Kong, which was our exit. So that's who we exited to. But that was partly driven because of the environment in Hong Kong. they were looking to figure out what is that entry point for them, knowing that this was such a fantastic financial hub, and the company was growing like wildfire. And so to get to the real meat of your question, we don't really focus on exits on day one. We are fortunate in many ways that we have very patient capital. We can deploy when we need to. We don't have to rush it, and we also know, given how long we've been doing venture capital, which has been over a decade, that times have changed. Companies can stay private much longer and earn significant amount of revenue over time. So they do not have to go public. We have a lot more options with SPACs, as we were talking about earlier. There's some good opportunities in that. And what we know for a fact is that there is a tremendous amount of capital at the Series B, C, and D stages. So growth capital is actually far outstripping what is in venture. So there's a lot of good opportunities for us to move companies from A to B, B to C, because that capital base is there. So we're not necessarily focused on exits. We're just focused on building value over time for our LPs.
Right.
Jane, can I just add one point to Mark?
Please.
I think that the last point that Mark made is very important, the growth capital. I think for those of you who have not been sort of looking at some of the statistics, I just want to share some numbers with you. Now, we have basically gone through this exercise with one of the big four to help us look at some recent numbers of private capital across Asia. Now, interestingly, Hong Kong has the second largest private capital pool in Hong Kong. Now, and when you divide up the capital, the fund size, divide up the number of deals, to my recollection, per deal, the fund size was something like over 100 million. So of course, it's not the sort of early stage seed Series A, it's some serious money. And this is where Hong Kong really excels as a place to help you scale up your business to the later stages.
Which makes it great for venture, because so there's always opportunities for our portfolio companies.
Sorry, but just to add one thing, even though Mark said exit is not important, but it's very important for project holders to understand that up until a certain stage, when you believe that your project is going to fly, Hong Kong is also a perfect place for you to do, say, pre-IPO family wealth structure plannings. And once you get IPO, you still want to control your company, but you have shares. What can you do? Hong Kong is a perfect place to provide, say, leverage, secondary market capital, ECM, DCM, everything. So the infrastructure before and after, and once you become a successful entrepreneur, you need wealth planning, wealth connect, wealth structures. This is where family office comes into space, and we can further on and help you to develop. So that is actually the power of Hong Kong as well.
Right. So, some great times. And actually, that's the time actually for our official questions. We do have, one from the public actually asking, any update on compliance and regulation on cryptocurrency trading and how is it aligned with international markets? Now, does anyone want to take this one on? It's changing by the day. Anyone brave enough?
Sure. Well, first, we are an investor in Paradigm, which is like the third or fourth largest OTC crypto exchange in the market today.
Right.
But in terms of the regulatory environment, we do feel that at the institutional level, we're seeing changes that allow asset managers or large family offices trade in big blocks, and they're following the typical AML KYC policy. So we think that's important, and I think that's sort of happening around the world, where more folks who are getting into this asset class still have to go through a traditional registered broker-dealer, which is great, which ultimately you can still get the benefits of the asset class and still get access to it in a way that gives you protection as you normally would with any other type of like equity or option.
Right. And I'm sure, King, you might have some comments about this as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't want to speak for our colleagues at SFC, which is the regulator overseeing this. But I just want to talk about...
Disclaimer on this one.
Right. So I just want to talk about the principles that I think the regulators have in mind. Now, at the end of the day, we all love innovation. But at the same time, we also have to balance that with, investor protection, right? Now, of course, I think for those of you who are following, the crypto, the DeFi, we are in a bullish trend. At the moment, we're in a bullish section of this whole evolution. So this is great, right? It's like party time. But at some point of time, the market will turn, right? Just like any cycles. So at the end of the day, I think the regulators really have the investors in mind. So what are the market turns? And then people got hurt. So as a result, essentially the balance that our regulators, our colleagues are trying to strike is to ensure we have enough innovation, which is why they laid out like circulars, other circulars or updates, because our colleagues at SFC, they're very much in tune with all the latest developments. They do the homework, they talk to international investors, they are one of the most knowledgeable on the planet. This is not from me, this is from people in the field commenting on our regulators in Hong Kong. So they know what's happening. At the same time, while they are enabling this innovation, they also would like to make sure that there's enough control from the investor protection standpoint. So I think this is a principle behind a lot of the decision-making of our regulators' friends.
Right. Thank you so much, actually. So from a government's perspective as well, while we're waiting for more questions to come up, actually, maybe I can direct something. I mean, we've been talking for a while, and we haven't mentioned the pandemic once, which is actually quite amazing on this recent kind of, discussions, obviously within tech as well. Inevitably, the impact of the pandemic has it comes up because of it's a massive thing. And, there have been some trends that have actually, supported the development of tech. And obviously there's some companies who are also having, challenges to address that as well. Edward, can you tell us more, some of the companies that you've been working with, some of the investment companies and investees, how have they been addressing the COVID situation? Have they done better? Are they pivoting? What kind of things are you seeing?
In fact, from an AUM or from a wealth development point of view, the pandemic actually helps. Not helps, but it actually didn't slow down the wealth creation and the accumulations. Why? We don't have a perfect answer for that, but apparently, first, maybe people think that because of pandemic, people have to stay home, so they just keep on looking at the screen and start to trade stocks. That is a very strange way of thinking, but in reality, think about it, people are using virtual meetings instead of face-to-face meetings. Yeah. You still have to continue to globalize your business. So one of the things that is going to happen is, do I have cybersecurities? Right? It comes into the matter of the question of, I still have to maybe say open account, I have to facilitate the payments, I still have to continue to develop my projects. Trade finance, a very important thing. Hong Kong is one of the biggest commodity trade finance center in the world, but how can we actually facilitate the process or the procedure without having any sort of security being in jeopardy, right? So cybersecurity is one thing that we are currently intensively looking at. And going back to also virtual assets or cryptocurrencies, it is something that since some time ago, endowments, sovereign funds, even family office has been allocating a bit more of their exposures in terms of percentage on that. And because of what happens on SFC announcing a new framework since last November, we believe the Hong Kong is actually moving the trend from a regulatory framework point of view and also development in the right way, because one of the role for us as an association is to attract family office or families from around the world to set up a satellite or even an office in Hong Kong to make use of Hong Kong to seek alpha. But how? If you look at the fintech space, it's very important that we have the correct regulatory framework to make sure professional and institutional investors' interest is well protected. Anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist laundering, all these are well protected, and we are pretty much in line with the most world-class international standards. So I guess this gives extra comfort to investors around the world as well.
Great. And Rico, from Cyberport's perspective, some of the fintechs that you're talking with, how has the impact of the pandemic changed your business or have it?
I think I have to echo on what's mentioned by Edward and also by King about two things. Cybersecurity and also the trade finance. We have two cases right in Cyberport, and they are companies that are coming from ASEAN. They set up their office in Hong Kong. One is a cybersecurity company, and they try to tap into the Hong Kong market to serve the insurance industry seriously. Because I think you may know that Hong Kong government granted 4 virtual insurance license. So this is a new business model. They need to be protected and also supported by cybersecurity. And another one about the trade finance. We have another company coming from ASEAN, and they provide payment solution. It's B2B. And you think about it, if you do see GBA as a big market, and trade finance play a key role. So payment, I'm not talking about our single payment solution. We are going to see a lot of very innovative payment solutions, non the fiat, but also the crypto to fiat and fiat to crypto. This is happening. I know that some of the financial institutions, they would like to make use of the government Fintech POC project to try the crypto payment solution. This is happening, but we need to take it step by step, to make sure that we align with the regulatory framework in Hong Kong and to protect our reputation as a tier one financial market.
Right. And you've seen that as well, King, with the kind of companies. I mean, are they having to adjust some of their business models in order to address a very different way of working now?
Well, I guess in the interest of time, I just say that it's a mixed picture, in all honesty. Now, for the ones that have already got traction, even before the pandemic, those companies are doing extremely well. You're talking about double, triple their business within a matter of a year. Now, but for those that are still in the earlier stage, now if they got the capital in the product development stage, that's still fine. But it's those that got the product, but they need to find clients, but yet they don't have a lot of clients on their portfolio. I think those are the ones that are, I would say, in a more difficult position. Now, so generally speaking, I guess the one thing that we are trying to help from government standpoint is that we have different programs. So for the Science Park, they do have the BFSI, and they have a program that basically connects the fintech companies with the corporates. They got 17 financial institutions lined up. And for our friends at Port, I think Rico, as I said, he's a guru on RegTech. He organized the RegTech Demo Day to help the RegTech companies to basically get access to clients. And for the fintech team, Invest Hong Kong, we got a fast track program. There's also a strong business matching component that we're helping the companies to get access to clients. So while some of the folks are still sort of under pressure, but then at the government side and also our friends here, we're also trying to help the best we can.
Great. So thank you. And our time is up. This is Jane Chan from the head of StartmeupHK Invest Hong Kong, and this is a Start Me Up Hong Kong salon. We also have our festival happening between the 24th to the 28th of May, where we've got a lot of experts like these fantastic panelists talking about various topics across fintech, across AI, prop tech, and there's also lots of opportunities for companies to potentially basically be matched with potential distributors, business partners, as well as investors. So check out the StartmeupHK website for more information, and we would love to see you then. Can I just end it by saying a massive thank you to my fantastic panelists today. I mean, I've learned so much. Every time we do this, I feel like, oh my goodness, it's just so good to have these people on hand to give these kind of insights. So I would like to say thank you ever so much, Spencer, Mark, Edward, Rico, and King, of course, my colleague. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Wow, this has been an amazing journey, and thank you very much for connecting with us. I'm sure you have created and built strong relationships around the startup ecosystem. If you want to know more about the ecosystem, please make sure to connect with the StartmeupHK team. And hopefully I can see you next year so we can learn more about what's happening in innovation, startup, and anything around our ecosystems. So see you next year. My name is Jamilet. Thank you.